Paloma Verde CBD is your one-stop shop for all things CBD related, and that is because Carlos and Vanessa, the owners of Paloma Verde CBD, love this show. They support this show, which means you guys, as listeners of the show, get a discount. Discount code BUCKBUCK at checkout. Get you 20% off of your order. And like I said, it's because they're wonderful. They're like-minded, and they're giving you amazing products. They've got all kinds of stuff. Like I said, all things CBD related. They've got CBD salve, the CBD tinctures, CBD soft gels, CBD gummies. They've got a sleep bundle, a CBD sleep bundle to help you guys who have trouble sleeping. I know that's widespread these days. Well, look no further than the sleep bundle at palomaverdecbd.com. And now I'm going to tell you a personal story that happened. And a lot of you guys are familiar with my friend, your friend probably, Tommy Salmons, that hosts the Year Zero podcast. His beautiful, wonderful wife, Beatrix, was experiencing really bad hand pain, like carpal tunnel style. And he reached out and said, "What's that stuff you raved about from Paloma Verde?" And I said, "Well, Tommy, it's the Cool Menthol Sports Cream. It's the best pain-relieving cream I've ever used." So, lo and behold, he gets it. He puts in discount code BUCK at checkout, gets him 20% off, gets his lovely wife this cream, and he tells me the other day, "I've got one problem with their business model over at Paloma Verde CBD. It's that they're not going to make enough money." She used the cream one time, and she was healed. So now what do we do? You know, how are we going to keep supporting Carlos and Vanessa over at palomaverdecbd.com? I said, well, if the products work that well, I suppose that's a good problem to have. And like I've mentioned before, my dogs, my French bulldogs, Lux and George, love the CBD dog chews and the pet CBD tinctures. Just go to palomaverdecbd.com, search around, buy a few things, and type in promo code BUCK at checkout for 20% off of your order. Let's get to the show.
You are now listening to the Counterflow Podcast, a place for dissonant voices and unapproved opinions.
You get split in fucking half, but I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Here is your host and humble narrator, Buck Johnson.
What is up, you guys? Welcome back once again to the Counterflow Podcast. Great to have you here with me this week, where I've got a returning guest. My pal Jason Rink is back on the show. So he's got a new documentary ready to drop very soon here, about sometime in July. And it's called The Most Canceled Man in America. Now, I feel like, and you might feel like after this conversation, that title is about Jason Rink. Maybe he's a close second. I don't even want to tell you who the actual documentary is about. We're going to get into all of that. But what's fascinating about this is it really shouldn't matter. The Most Canceled Man in America, again, it's a documentary that was going to be shown at the Anthem Film Festival at Freedom Fest, right? So you hear Freedom Fest, you hear Anthem Film Festival. That's a reference to Ayn Rand. Obviously, this is a liberty-oriented event. He was going to have this film screened at. Not only was he going to have it screened, he was going to have a panel with himself questioning the subject of the documentary. However, I know a lot of people in the liberty world think, well, we love freedom of speech. That's what libertarians do. Not always the case. His documentary and the subsequent discussion panel were both kicked off of the event way before it even happened. Because why? Well, we'll get into that. We're going to discuss some of the things surrounding, let's see how I can phrase this without knocking the algorithms crazy. The 6th day of January, I think you're familiar with that. We're going to discuss some of the events around that in this show trial they've got going on surrounding that. Jason, my guest, was there at the Capitol that day filming part of another documentary. He's done one on Stop the Steal and one called Q Sent Me, which is on the Q shaman, the buffalo-looking fella that unfortunately is still locked up. So when you combine that he was there on that day, those two documentaries I mentioned, plus the Most Canceled Man in America documentary I mentioned, and the subject of that documentary, who I haven't mentioned yet, and then Jason Rink getting canceled all over the place, including at Libertarian events. You've got quite a show here. And Jason is a really good guy. I hate to see him keep getting knocked off Twitter, Facebook. Again, he's getting canned from Libertarian film festivals. He's just, You would think he's some kind of rebel-rousing edgelord. He's not. Here he is. He's kind. He's genteel. He is a very good guy, fun to hang out with in person, and I'm glad to have him here. Jason Rink, welcome back to Counterflow. How are you?
Hey, man, it's good to be back on. I was thinking back to when I was on before, and it was like sometime late summer or something. I know I was in Ohio in a hotel room.
That's right. You sure were. Yes. And we were talking about some other documentaries, and I want to link back to those in this conversation, but we'll get there. You must, with that professional setup you've got behind you, assume you're at home in Austin now?
Yeah, I am. So I'm here in Austin and been doing some podcasts and doing some recording and working on some projects and keeping super busy, man. Enjoying this 100-degree weather we got going on.
Yeah, you're enjoying it the right way then because you're inside.
Yeah, right on.
It's too hot. So I guess we'll get into this little discussion because I'm going to break this up into two parts. It's going to be called The Most Canceled Man in America. And I recognize that when you first made this documentary, you were talking about someone else, but I'm starting to think it's about you. So we'll break it up into the documentary and then the stuff that you've been going through as well. And before we get into all of that, you've been on before, obviously, and I've had a decent amount of new listeners come on since last summer. So give them a quick intro on who you are and what you do, and then we'll jump into things.
Yeah, 100%, man. So, I got into the Libertarian freedom movement back in 07, 08 with Ron Paul. I worked on his campaign on the grassroots level back then. And that was sort of the red pill moment for me, right? Ron Paul changed my life. And so changed my perspective on everything. I ended up leaving commercial banking kind of as a result of it. Once I learned how the Federal Reserve worked and I realized I wanted to, get into media production. This is back in 2009. And so I had the opportunity to come down to Austin back then. Made my first documentary in 2011 with Tom Woods and Michael Bolden of the 10th Amendment Center. It's a film called Nullification, the Rightful Remedy. And, I had so little money to make that. I used Costco's return policy 3 times to buy the camera, then return it, get another camera, then return it. And I kept the last one, but it was like, I just didn't know if I was going to be able to make this filmmaking thing work, right? So, but yeah, that film was sort of my start in, actually, I won a couple of awards at the Freedom Fest Anthem Film Festival in 2012 as a result of that film. And I've really just been making films and videos on a professional level ever since then. I have my own production company, a commercial production company where we do work for all sorts of clients. And then I have sort of my other company, which we do documentary storytelling and sort of my passion projects. And so that's what I've really been doing, spending a lot of my time in over the last, almost 2 years at this point, when I, decided to go follow the Stop the Steal movement around the country in the aftermath of the 2020 election.
Some of the topics you document in your documentaries, I mean, even for libertarians, to some libertarians, they're like taboo subjects, and certainly to a lot of, we'll call them, I don't know, default leftists around the country, the subjects are taboo. Is there any worry that, or have you had experience of people trying to dox you with the other job that you just mentioned, like a regular kind of commercial setup, and then you've got this other these documentaries that you make? Do people ever try to get you in trouble with the other businesses?
Well, it's really funny. It says Cancel Proof behind me, and that's a podcast we have, and I do some writing under that brand as well. And it wasn't until this all started happening. Well, when COVID was happening, and I saw that people were losing their jobs for not taking the jab and things like that, I started to really appreciate how cancel-proof my income already was at that point. I own a couple of different production companies. All the people who work for me or with me are all like-minded, freedom-centric. And then even the commercial clients we have, or the ones we are serving now, I've done work for Aston Martin, Toyota, other big corporate companies. And while that was fun when we did it, it wasn't really the kind of work we were wanting to do. We were wanting to work with different types of entrepreneurs and businesses, frankly. And so, in some ways, I think the door is a little bit closed to me on some of that kind of more corporate work where,
That's good.
woke
Okay.
policy takes over.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, the clients that we serve now, many of them are, again, very like-minded. They know what I'm up to. And frankly, I don't want this to sound like, I don't want to brag, but like in some of the industries that I work in, I've been doing good work in those industries long enough that frankly, people don't really care. Like,
Good.
we do good work. They can count on us. And so I haven't experienced it, but one thing I noticed was when I decided to go out and start making the film on the 2020 election, one of the reasons I did it was because I looked at my situation and I was like, I can do this. I can have the courage to step out and do this. There are other people who won't or don't. And I said, if me having my income somewhat insulated from going and taking on these projects, if I don't do it, then who will? And so that's kind of how I saw it. I felt like it was a little bit of a calling on my part.
That's a good attitude. If you don't do it, who will? Do you ever, I've experienced this. You have to have experienced it tenfold compared to me, but a lot of people who quote unquote can't do it are often thankful when someone does do it. Do you get people reaching out saying, oh my God, I would have done this, but I can't. So thank you so much.
Yeah. And, I think about this too. It's like, to do what you do, man, you need people in the audience. You need people listening. You need people consuming. You need people contributing financially, spreading the word on your behalf. And, so there's much a part of it as I am, right?
Yeah,
so
fair.
The way I see it is if people want to see more provocative content that's sort of on the fringes of storytelling and documentary filmmaking, you just come out and it's, support us when we release the films, purchase them. And really it's just, that's how we continue to be able to make more projects. And so, I do appreciate anybody who's out there and listen, I can appreciate where people are at, where they have to be silent, where they're stuck in a situation where they really can't speak up. It's no joke. And, you do have to prioritize like taking care of your family and paying the bills. And so, I do encourage people though to really take a hard look at that stuff and say, how can you start to pivot and find a way to be more autonomous over your business, over your income, over your revenue, over your wealth, over your geography.
Yes, I'm happy to see a lot of people in the, we'll call it liberty space, podcasting about that exact type of thing. In fact, I've one of the Expat Money Show is one of the sponsors of this show, and Miguel Thorpe's very good at that. So let's get into this documentary that you made on what you call the most canceled man in America. Again, we'll go, and later we'll get into, I think that's also you, but a lot of my audience, I suppose, would be familiar with Nick Fuentes. I certainly was, although I'm not like a massive consumer of his content, but I'm in a similar space. I'm quite familiar with him. It's funny, when I think of him, it's some of the people that don't like him act like he's Mr. The worst thing on the planet. And it's like, well, he's kind of seems harmless. I don't know. But maybe the fact that people with money and power are trying to shut him up means he's not harmless. I don't know. So quickly kind of get into what this documentary was about and who Nicholas Fuentes is and what you think of him. As I assume you must have had many interactions with him.
Yeah. So Nick really first came on my radar when I got involved in following the Stop the Steal movement. And so I didn't really know who Nick was. And so he was a guy who was organizing. He was bringing, he would produce hundreds, if not thousands of people at these rallies, and a lot of young people. Nick himself is 23 or 24. And so, and what I noticed was immediately, I saw him speak live, and he was in more of a rally protest mode than in his sort of America First podcast mode. And I was like, man, this guy is an effective speaker. Like, he's got a real command of the issues and of language, and people are responding to him. And so that put him on the radar for me, and then as everything, crescendoed with January 6th, and many of the people that I was following found themselves in getting canceled off of platforms and things. It came to my attention that not only was Nick being deplatformed off of what I think are about 40 different digital platforms, including like Airbnb, Amazon, AWS, Stripe, PayPal, so the financial, not just social media. It's not like he just lost a Twitter account. In fact, Twitter was one of the last accounts that he lost, strangely. And so, and that to me was important, but it wasn't as important as what happened shortly after Jan 6, when I found out that the Department of Justice seized $500,000 from his bank account. They put him on a no-fly list, and they never charged him with a crime, simply for the fact that he was in D.C. on January 6th. They opened an investigation on him, and he's still not been charged of a crime to this day. He didn't go in the Capitol. He didn't participate in any illegal activity. But because he is a very significant figure, and the Department of Justice, by the way, right after Jan 6, one of the guys from the Department of Justice, I forget his name, went on 60 Minutes and talked about how they wanted to implement a shock and awe strategy to round up as many people, including the internet celebrities. That was part of their plan. And so Nick found himself not rounded up necessarily, but in a way put on house arrest because $500,000 was frozen in his account and he couldn't get on a plane in the United States. And when I heard about that, for me, that was like the issue where I was like, I don't have to agree with everything Nick says, but any American who that would happen to, that's just the fundamental violation of rights. And at the same time, I was being canceled off of Twitter and Facebook for posting a movie trailer for a different film. And so I saw the connection between, here's Nick Fuentes getting, his rights violated by the federal government for being at the same event that I was at. It's not a stretch for me to recognize that if I didn't see a cause to defend over there where Nick was, that I was digging my own grave, so to speak. And anybody else who values liberty and libertarian principles should be able to see that as well. And so even though I realized it was a risk to make a project, and I worked on it with a filmmaking partner of mine named Paul Eskandone, we were like, okay, well, this story needs to be told, so we're going to try to tell it in a compelling way. And that's sort of where that began. And we started working on that probably about a year ago last year.
Yeah, I found that interesting. The shock and awe part of that, you just alluded to that a while ago, because obviously many of us will understand that's a reference to a tactic they used in the war in Iraq under the War on Terror banner. And now they're using it on Trump supporters, and many of whom, and maybe I don't want to stereotype too much because I think their hearts and minds have changed on foreign policy issues, but I'm suspecting there were some of these Trump voters that at the time supported the war in Iraq and supported this shock and awe campaign and supported sending a lot of money and resources to, the military-industrial complex that now seems turned inward on them. So that's not the best way to learn a lesson. It's a way to learn a lesson. And I suspect many have learned that lesson. Do you sense that?
Oh, yeah. And, going back to Ron Paul's 2007 campaign and, 2008 campaign, when he was talking about all of these issues about Patriot Act being used to, really be turned on us. And he was laughed off the stage, at that time. And many people thought this was ridiculous. And, in Ron Paul's case, he's just been early, right? But he saw what was going to happen. And when he talked about it, I was like, oh yeah, I totally see that. And so, for me, seeing this happening, and when Jan 6 went down and I was there, filming the documentary, and when I saw what was happening, it was the same day that I was like, man, I know exactly how the federal government is going to use this to push forward their agenda. Like I recognized it. The writing was on the wall. And so I do think that many people on the right, Republicans, MAGA people, have had their eyes open to the intelligence agencies essentially being just arms of the state and the regime, and the social media companies being an extension of those intelligence agencies. So that awakening is a really, really good thing. Unfortunately, the size and scope and power of what's been built over the last several decades is very, very difficult to shut down.
It is. I think Tucker is a major important voice in helping red pill lots of folks in that demographic as well. Also, just an aside here, when you were at this event, and I forgive me if I asked you this in the previous interview, but it's such an obvious question to me now. Did you spot or suspect feds in the crowd?
So it's interesting because I didn't, and it's somewhat because of my proximity. I decided not to breach onto the Capitol lawn personally. I didn't go into the Capitol. I kept a safe distance away from the activity because I thought that it might be problematic to do so. And so depending on which side of the Capitol you were on, that day looked a lot different, right? So on that side there by the reflecting pool, that's where a lot of that conflict was going down, and on one of the other sides of the Capitol. But I was over more on the Supreme Court side, and it just looked like a bunch of people hanging off of the balcony and waving America First flags, and it just seemed sort of like a frat party, And so, but the other thing is that for many years I've recognized that whenever you assemble any significant number of people who are against the regime or represent liberty or whatever, and really on the right or the left, frankly, infiltration is likely. And I think you always have to think of that as being the case. I think, people go up to Pork Fest, here in a couple of, what a week in New Hampshire. It's like, you got to assume there's feds there. Like you always have to. And I think it sounds paranoid, but so it doesn't surprise me that there were. And then I do believe there's enough evidence to support the fact that there were feds and federal informants across some of the major organizing groups. One thing, just side note on that is, I've come to believe that I think the Oath Keepers were probably pretty infiltrated with, federal agents or informants. And the Oath Keepers provided free security for a lot of the high-level organizers during the Stop the Steal events, which is interesting because if there were informants and federal agents embedded in there, then you've actually put people in proximity to all of the conversations that they're having, and you're thinking, wow, we have security. And it's like, oh no, you actually just have allowed an informant to come be right in the middle of everything. So I think there was probably quite a bit of that going on in retrospect.
There's a lot of people that are considering getting the heck out of the United States these days. It was COVID tyranny. It still is in a lot of places, but who knows? Maybe it's climate change tyranny coming next. If that's you and you're thinking about exploring life in another country, I've got an amazing resource to share with you, and that would be the Expat Money Show, hosted by Mikkel Thorup. Whether it's foreign residencies, second passports, asset protection, or just protecting your money from the tyranny of taxation, there is no better resource than the Expat Money Show. That is for certain. Mikkel has spent over 20 years traveling the world, visiting more than 100 countries while living in 9 different countries over that time. He can help you legally eliminate your tax bill and travel the world in the process. So, doesn't that sound fun? It is pretty damn appealing, I gotta admit. Subscribe to the Expat Money Show today, available on podcatchers everywhere, YouTube, or just head over to expatmoneyshow.com. Did you see, speaking of that, did you see this arrest of a bunch of people made the other day from something called like Patriot Front or some ridiculous group like this? They all these like well-built white men wearing masks over their face in the exact same uniforms. Where have I seen a demographic like that? Oh yeah, feds.
Yeah. Well, and it's like I never saw I never heard of Patriot Front until after January 6th. So it's
right.
Okay, right. No problem. Yeah. But so it's laughable.
AstroTurf. It is. Speaking of laughable, something I wanted to ask you about. I've avoided any mention on this show and any watching in real life this dog and pony show that we discussed right before I started recording with you that's going on about the date, January 6th. It's theater, and it's they're showing it, and I find in my circles at least, and I mean normies and obviously my political circles, no one's interested so much in paying close attention to it, but they're acting like this should be the focus of middle America when gas prices are like at all-time highs, and people can't afford meat and eggs at this point. But oh my God, look at this dog and pony show. What happened on January 6th? I was going to ask you if you paid attention to this theatrical production, but I know because I spoke with you prior to this recording that you have. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, so me and my filmmaking partner, Paul, we have a podcast that's inconsistent, but it's called Cancel Proof. And so we've been live streaming and commenting on it. And, one of the reasons we chose to do so is because on the opening night, the first night, they did it at prime time, right? 8 p.m. on all the news channels.
Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the star witnesses they had was a filmmaker named Nick Fuentes, who we actually have spoken to. We had dinner with him. He was actually trying to license footage from us at one point. And then it turned out that he's now like one of the star witnesses for the government in the January 6th hearings. So there's been some questions about whether or not, he's a Fed or not. I will not, publicly make any assertion of that at this point. But what I will say is that, it was interesting because I have a little insight on this. Number one, I was reached out to by the Jan 6 committee. They emailed me. They wanted to speak to me. They wanted to see my footage.
Wow.
My attorney said no. And I thought that I would be getting a subpoena from them. That never materialized. It still could. But at this point, I don't think it's going to. And I was very sensitive to what they were going to do or what they were looking for in the footage. I also felt like if they ever got my footage, they weren't going to find anything. There's no smoking gun because there isn't one.
Right.
But what was interesting was I had the opportunity to look at some of this guy's footage, who was the star witness a few months ago. He shared some footage with me. And so when I'm watching that first night's hearing, I noticed that they're showing some of the footage. Well, it was interesting to notice what they didn't show because he had different angles of, say, Ashley Babbitt's shooting and her body being taken away, of Roseanne Boylan, who was somebody who collapsed. There's speculation or evidence that she may have been trampled by Capitol Police and then was tried to be resuscitated. And some of these really significant things about a couple of people who died who were protesters, that footage wasn't shown. What they did show was some footage that sort of supported their narrative, which is, that there was just a violent riot, right? Mm-hmm. And so, that I found interesting. And I did notice also that they selectively edited a clip that some of you guys have probably heard about. Ray Epps, who's one of the guys who people think is a Fed. He's one of the only people on camera who was actually telling people to go into the Capitol and multiple times. There's almost nobody else who's been caught on camera doing anything like that. He was not arrested. He was taken off the FBI's most wanted list. And so they showed a clip in the hearing, and it was a clip where Ray Epps is in the clip, but they zoomed in on it, so he was cropped out of it. So it was like, even in footage they used, they even cropped it, showed things. And then a lot of the deposition footage that they played, it's like 12 seconds of somebody saying something. And most of these people were deposed for hours. Ali Alexander was there for 10 hours. I was in DC when he was there. And it's like, we're not getting any of his testimony, but so it's a very handpicked witnesses, handpicked footage, handpicked line of inquiry that is really just looking to try to connect the dots to say that Donald Trump knew the election was fine. He lied to his supporters to make them think it was stolen. And because of that, he's responsible for what led to Jan 6. I think the ultimate goal is they want to try to make it impossible for him to run in 2024. And they've also tried to get any representatives like Marjorie Taylor Greene and others to be disqualified from running in 2022. And getting back to your original question, I think many people are very aware of this. Like, I don't think that many people in America think January 6th was what the media blew it up to be. People might have concerns, people who don't like Trump or whatever, but I don't think a lot of people are buying it. I think a lot of people aren't paying attention to it because they've got bigger issues that are really impacting them today.
I think one of the interesting studies, it's like a social study that's going to arise here, is over the next couple of years, as things get pretty bad, and in my estimation that they're going to economically, as things get really bad, it will be fascinating to watch who's willing to stand up and say the emperor has no clothes, and which people stand by despite everything falling from the sky around him and say, no, he's got clothes on. Like, I'm curious. I know people that I would consider just above the poverty line, basically, that are writing on Facebook about January 6th and how important that everyone should watch this. And it's like, you can't afford to put fuel in your vehicle, man. And I know you can't, because I know who you are. So, it'll be fascinating to watch as things get worse and worse, who finally stands up and says, this is nuts. I'm sure they're still going to blame someone else, but we'll see. I want to really quick, before we get into your actual story, this part's important to me, and you discussed it already, but I want to emphasize it. They weren't canceling Nick Fuentes' Facebook, although I'm sure these things are all gone. But it wasn't so much that, oh my God, his Twitter got pulled or his Instagram or something, because you still have libertarians going, well, who cares? Those are private companies. But his bank account frozen. He's on the no-fly list, and he discovers this while he's at the airport. Something I've tried to emphasize is that this stuff about Beto or some person like this commanding their boys in blue to come around and knock on every door and take every gun from every house in Texas is antiquated and irrelevant if they can shut your bank account down. They can freeze your credit. They can, all of these things they can do from the tower on high if they need to. They don't want to risk a bloody war of coming to your door. Now, they can shut your bank account down unless you turn in your guns, I suppose, something like this. But this thought of Beto commanding an army of thin blue line guys to come to every door in Texas and take guns would end up in bloodshed immediately. But when they do these things to people like they did to the Canadian truckers, the people that supported the Canadian truckers, Nick Fuentes, it's pretty easy for them to basically shut someone out of society. They can cancel them, their money, their income, everything that way. They don't need your guns.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point, man. And it's like, that's one of the reasons that this story resonated with me. It's one of the reasons why also, in what kind of got me into some trouble with this film is, it's a 21-minute short documentary. May end up being a large feature doc at some point, but this particular film is just 21 minutes long, and it doesn't really have anything to do with whether or not you think Nick's ideas are controversial, whether you think he's a white nationalist, whatever you might think about Nick, okay? Doesn't have anything to do with that, because as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't matter what you believe politically. Right. The government can't do that. And I wouldn't want that done to my worst enemy. Now, on the flip side, there are people in this country who do want that done to their worst enemy.
A lot of
there
people.
There are people. Yeah, there are even people who are in the libertarian sphere, frankly, who wouldn't mind if a guy like Nick was sitting in Guantanamo Bay right now, just for being
right.
Yeah, for having the wrong ideas. And so that's another thing that, as I've been on this journey and as we tried to get it to screen at Freedom Fest and Anthem Film Festival, I ended up running up against the regime libertarians who said, you know what, this is a bridge too far. We're not interested in hearing or seeing a story about what happened to Nick. If it would have happened to anybody in the libertarian movement, or even anybody who works at the National Review, or whatever, would have been fine. But because it happened to a guy like Nick, who is easy to hate, who nobody wants to defend because of guilt by association, all of these things. Everyone's so scared of being called a racist or a misogynist or a homophobe or whatever it is, that's it. That's all it takes to shut things down, is that fear. And so, that I think is the other side of this, right? It's like, yeah, the federal government can come do this. That is really scary. At the same time, who's gonna speak up for you? Who's gonna defend you when it happens to you? Nobody. There's such a lack of courage out there to stand for what's right, to have integrity, and to stand in your convictions.
There is, and even further than that, I believe we saw this all over the place in 2020 and 2021. People will not only not leave you alone, but if you're going against what they want, they will work for free as arms of the state. They'll call, oh my God, Jason's got 10 cars at his house and it's 2020. No one can be there. I'll call the cops. Stuff like that. So, and there's plenty of people within the libertarian circles that had this been a film about, let's say, Jill Stein, or for people that, that's an obscure name, the lady from the Green Party, the last presidential representative. If it was about someone like that on the far left, more power to you, Jason. You're allowed to film that. You're allowed to discuss this, because those are ideas that the regime doesn't really find offensive. I mean, they're not going to let a Jill Stein in with power, or even a Bernie Sanders, as we saw, but they're certainly adjacent to what they're doing. And now it is the time, you've already alluded to it, to get to what happened to you. What is Freedom Fest, for those who are not sure about what that is? And because that's, I believe, where your film got canceled from, but I'll let you take that from here.
Yeah. So Freedom Fest is sort of the libertarian CPAC, and I think last year it was in South Dakota. There was over 2,000 people there. Everybody from Spike Cohen to Dave Smith to Andrew Yang is speaking there, to Rand Paul, to, all sorts of people. The list of speakers is long, and it's a lot of libertarians and people kind of on the right and in the anarchist world. And so, and it has been an event going on for over 10 years. And it's actually always been a lot of fun, frankly. It's been a great place to connect with people. They, I think, have always done a really good job of bringing an interesting gathering there. So it's you can have your anarchists, you can have your libertarians, you can have your conservatives, and you get to meet up with people, connect on different issues. And, so that's what it is. And the Anthem Film Festival is a libertarian film festival that happens during Freedom Fest. And it's really interesting because they advertised this year as saying, this year we're bringing you four full days of hard-hitting, controversial films that would definitely not be approved by Biden's new Ministry of Disinformation, films that have been banned on some platforms, but we aren't afraid to show them.
Wow.
So, I thought that this would be the perfect venue. I judged the film festival last year. I have had a long-standing relationship with Freedom Fest and Anthem Film Festival. And when I submitted this short film, I thought maybe they wouldn't accept it because it's about Nick. And lo and behold, they did. They did accept the film. They were excited to have it. Went so far as to actually thinking they were going to let Nick come and be on a Q&A panel after the film.
Right.
And that's kind of where the trouble started for them, was they ended up putting out an announcement. So they were proud to have the film as part of the agenda. Initially, they had a graphic from my film poster in the email they sent out to their email list. And they listed that Nick was going to be speaking. Well, that he was going to be on the panel. Well, the fact of the matter is Nick hadn't confirmed he could do it. I had told him I needed to get a confirmation from Nick, and he hadn't gotten back to me. It was just 3 days later. So I immediately reached out to them. I said, hey guys, Nick hasn't confirmed, got a little ahead of yourselves. Let me go and see if he can do it. Well, they basically realized within an hour, because they got bombarded with messages on Twitter. Well, not bombarded, but Nick Sawworks of the world and Joe Bishop Henchman and, Andy Craig and Radley Balco and certain people in the libertarian sphere tweeted out, how reprehensible it was that they would give Nick a platform, that he was going to appear at the festival. And so within a couple of hours, they sort of rescinded that invitation, scrubbed him from the schedule. And I thought that would be the end of it. And frankly, I was okay with it initially. I said, it's fine. Like, I get it. This could create a little bit of a stir. But within about 48 hours, they reached back out to me and basically to let me know that the film had gotten pulled, that they had received communication from some of the most influential libertarian organizations out there. I was told by the organizers that those organizations were Reason, Cato, the Libertarian Party, FIRE, National Review, and MPI, and that's what led them to pull the film. And so the reason this was such an issue for me and why I made such a big deal about it was because Freedom Fest and Anthem can call themselves independent. They say that they are not influenced. And in fact, they even publicly stated that they weren't influenced by anybody after they told me that on a call. There's a lot of controversy surrounding this. None of those organizations have spoken up and said, yes, we did, or no, we didn't contact them. Mm-hmm. But the bottom line was that what it exposed to me was that these events aren't quite as independent as they like themselves to be. And because these big libertarian organizations spend $10,000, $15,000 to exhibit and sponsor and all of this, I'm just a filmmaker with a film they accepted that they could quietly scrub from the schedule and sort of wanted me to shut up about it. And then those powerful, influential organizations would be happy. But I wasn't going to shut up about it because I felt like this sort of exposes the rotten foundation underneath the libertarian movement and regime libertarians. I think some of the stuff that, even the Mises Caucus takeover was in response to was this kind of stuff happening. And so, so as of this point, they officially pulled my film from the schedule. It's not there. I was actually supposed to still, after they pulled my film, they still had me on as a speaker on a session called like Fighting the Cancel Police or something. Oh. And I was like, guys, I'm not speaking on that there. You guys are the cancel police. So just take that off the schedule as well, because that doesn't make any sense. And so, it's been really crazy. And, I think that it's disappointing to me. I have some good friends who, made some of these calls and, but at the same time, I think it's useful, man. It's useful anytime you see what's reality. Yeah, it helps you move more powerfully in the world.
Yeah. The biggest shock of all this is that the Libertarian Party had sway with anyone. Interesting. I just had to take that dig. Did it surprise you? And again, please answer this honestly. For me, it does not surprise me that Cato Institute, Reason Magazine, the LP, and National Review were in lockstep on anything, honestly. But did that surprise you at all?
Yeah, not really. I mean, and what was funny to me is it's like, why is National Review weighing in on a libertarian conference? But I digress, right? It's like, what does that matter? And I will clear something up. I have not gotten an official word from FIRE on this. I did speak to somebody internal at FIRE who said that he asked around about it, and they said that didn't happen. And
what is FIRE? I'm not familiar with FIRE.
That's the Foundation for Individual Rights or something, but they defend free speech on college campuses. So it was a very interesting, they're kind of like the new ACLU, right? And I'm in the dark a little bit because none of those organizations have reached out to me. I'm just some guy canceled from the internet making movies. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a big donor, to these organizations. So what do they care? But it is interesting to me because it doesn't really change anything. I mean, either Freedom Fest and Anthem were just in cover your ass mode, and they just told me some story to try to get me to go away, for them to be like, hey, we can't do anything about it. But that seems unlikely they would do that. They specifically named these organizations. And I know some people at some of those organizations that I think could be the culprits. And so, it just surprised It just surprised me the way it went down. And then the way that people sort of tried to cover their butts and tried to... the other thing was, tried to question my credibility about it. I record almost all my conversations anymore. I screenshot the hell out of everything because I've been dealing with being canceled, deplatformed from multiple places since January 6th, basically. And so, I've been in situations before where it's kind of like my word against theirs. And so that's what happened. It's really bummed about that. But right now, we are, it is very likely, if anybody's listening is going to Freedom Fest, that we are going to be having a screening of the film somewhere in the vicinity of the Mirage in Las Vegas on Thursday night, the 14th of July. And there may be some interesting people in attendance at that red carpet event. So details forthcoming, and I'll plug my Substack real quick, cancelproof.substack.com. If you subscribe there, you're going to get a heads up on anything that happens regarding the screening, the film, where you can see it, and what I'm up to.
One of my favorite sponsors is back with us here on Counterflow. That would be Texas Scorecard. Anytime you want to find out anything that's going on in the Texas political scene without a bad propagandized media narrative, just visit Texas Scorecard. They were founded in 2015 by a former Ron Paul congressional press secretary. They're Texas-based, they're a Texas-focused counterculture media organization. They've got so many cool things over at Texas Scorecard. Lots of podcasts, videos. Actually, I was a part of that. You can find a video there of me being interviewed in the Texas Scorecard studio. They've got live programming. They've got a print edition. They've got a very popular daily email newsletter highlighting the biggest stories of the day. They've even got a program to help grow the next generation of disruptors, and we like that. Their mission, disrupt statism and reconstitute self-governments. They are pro-citizen. They serve the grassroots against big government through narrative, tools, and information. They do not align with any party. I think that's very important. They work to hold lawmakers on both sides of the aisle accountable. They're a nonprofit. There's no paywalls. You guys aren't going to have to pay for any of this. Their reporting is always free. Find them on all social media channels by searching Texas Scorecard. They're on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of that. You can sign up for their free daily newsletter at texasminute.com. That is texasminute.com. Think about this. They support this program for you guys. So just give them a look. Texas Scorecard. Anytime you want to find out the real deal of what's going on in the Texas political scene, Texas Scorecard is your one-stop shop. Let's get back to the show. I like it. This is maybe intentionally or unintentionally influenced by Ron Paul. If you remember, of course, in 2008 and 2012, the Republican National Convention was held, and Ron Paul said, well, you guys can have that party that you basically kicked me out of, but I'm going to hold my own party right next door to it. And both of those, I was not only an attendee, I played music at them, but I like...
Yeah, no, I was just going to ask you. So, yeah, I was at the Rally for the Republic up in St. Paul back after the 2008. And then Paul Fest down in Florida happened. I don't know if that was the event that you're talking about that you played at. Yeah,
it was the one in Florida. It was at a basketball arena for a college basketball team, University of Central Florida or something. I can't remember.
Yeah, I wasn't not at that one. I do know what you're talking about. Yeah, that's incredible, man. Yeah. Ron Paul had the counter events, and it was the place to be. So
who would want to go be at a Mitt Romney or John McCain party when you could be at a Ron Paul party? You kind of mentioned this, but just to clarify, no apologies from anyone with any say in this at this point?
No, I mean, I got a lot of hey, we're sorry this is happening to you. And I was like, well, nothing's happening to me. You guys are doing something to me. But and then what was interesting was this all happened about a little over 2 weeks ago. It wasn't until yesterday that I got an official notification that the film was absolutely not getting put back on the schedule. And frankly, but it wasn't in the form of a personal email or phone call. I was in personal email contact with the organizers every day for about a week while this was happening. And then I published my article because I was like, hey, listen, you guys are not going to do the right thing here. I'm going to put you on blast. Nobody called me. They responded on Twitter, still never got a call. And so, I haven't been, contacted really from their end. So yeah, that's like I said, it's kind of a bummer. And then the organizations involved who applied any pressure, haven't heard from any of them. Haven't seen a statement from any of them. It is interesting. I do think that a substantial press release might be going out from somebody about this whole thing in a couple of days that I think might get some media attention. So we'll see if this thing comes back into the news cycle. But yeah, it's Freedom Fest is in like a month, and I'm going to be out there, and I would love to connect with listeners of this podcast. If there's anybody who's going out there, I will be in Vegas for that, at least hanging out, networking, and like I said, doing a counter screening.
I like it. Counter. Has anyone reached out to support you in this whole drama?
Yeah, well, that's what's been awesome. People like Pete Quinones, had me on his podcast. He's a guy I told about this first when it happened. I actually was asking him for a little bit of advice. Tom Woods just did a podcast with him that'll be dropping very soon. Tom has been somebody who's come along and has had me on his show a few times. I've known Tom for years, and he's put himself at risk to feature some of this stuff. You've supported me in the past, having me on here, and just in this whole midst of all of this. And I have heard from a number of people who have reached out to me about it. Another person who went to bat for me is my friend and mentor, John Popola, who runs a company called Emergent Order. They did the classic Keynes versus Hayek rap videos that many people have seen over the years. And I worked for John for many years. He mentored me in my entire career. And John went on Facebook and he made a statement kind of about this. And, so I have had some people that have gone out there and have said, listen, Jason's a good guy. We don't think he's a white nationalist, which is totally dumb, but it's like, that's the other thing that I think I have going for me a bit is like most people who know me know that I've always tried to facilitate productive conversation. I've always been very honoring to other people. I've always tried to create as big a tent for ideas as possible. And I'm a pretty nice guy. And so that's actually been, I think, almost more powerful for me as I've become when I call myself the most canceled filmmaker in America, and I'm not the most canceled man, but filmmaker for sure. I say a lot of people have seen it and it's made them do a double take because they're like, wait a minute, I've seen the trailers and they're not promoting violence and they're not, it's like, what is going on here? So it's sort of like this idea in the Bible where it talks about trying to be blameless before all men. Mm-hmm. Like if you move through the world in a way where you have integrity and you have a testimony of people saying, you know what, everything I've known about that person, I can stand with them. You'll find that in these times, many times you'll find people will stand up for you and be your ally. And so that has been encouraging for me. And I'm thankful to everybody who's done that publicly and privately.
So we know this film's been canceled at the Anthem Film Festival. Where can people find the film and watch it? It's really short, guys. It's very interesting, very good. It's 21 minutes. I know in 2022, is that what we're in now? Everyone's attention span is so short. It's so short. But you guys, if you've made it through, let's see, 40-something minutes of this podcast, you can make it through a 21-minute documentary. Where can they see it?
Yeah, so there is a trailer out there on my Rumble, and maybe you can link that to the show notes. And then the actual film itself, we're going to premiere it right now. Details forthcoming. I believe we're going to premiere it on July 14th in Las Vegas, sometime that evening. And then shortly after that, I think we're going to make it available online in some capacity, give people an opportunity to watch it. And if they think it is valuable and want to support our mission, give us a few shekels few dollars, a few crypto, whatever they want to help us continue to make this content, because I do finance it all out of my pocket. My businesses make money, and I take that money and I deploy it into my passion projects. That's kind of the model. And so, these things are not cheap. We are striving to make the highest quality content that could compete with anything else out there. And so I appreciate all the support. I do also want to call out to people. The next film that we'll be releasing, the feature, Q Sent Me at qsentmemovie.com, is the film that I talked about when I was on your last show about the Q shaman, Jacob Chansley, and his journey to, during, and after January 6th. We hope to have that film finished before the end of the year. In time for festival season to probably be canceled from those festivals. But,
of course, right.
But looking to release that and let the world see that before the second anniversary of January 6th. So,
And that poor gentleman's still in captivity, is correct?
Yeah, he pled guilty to a felony of interrupting Congress, which, the fact of the matter is most people who are being held and going to trial are losing. They're not getting fair trials as far as I'm concerned. So Jake pled guilty to interrupting Congress, received 41 months. They credited him with the time served, which 300 days of that was in solitary prior to his plea. So, Jake is scheduled to be out in about 2 years. We'll see what happens. But he is, the Q shaman is going to have spent 41 months of his life behind bars for really doing nothing. I mean, didn't do anything violent. He was never charged with any violence. He prayed. He walked through the Senate, and he looked like, threatening to AOC, I guess. So
he very publicly rejected regime propaganda. Unfortunately, that's what can happen. And I suspect when he gets out of prison, well, you know what? We'll see where the political climate is in 2024. I suspect it's going to be quite different than it is now. But if it weren't different, I suspect that gentleman's not going to have any online accounts or bank accounts, certainly. But hopefully things change prior to that. Before we get you out of here, just curious, have you seen 2,000 Mules?
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
I rarely watch these type of things, and my goodness, this one was hard to get a hold of. Of course, that's by design from the powers that be. I knew someone with a login, et cetera, et cetera. I did watch it. What did you think of that?
So on the positive side, I think in the films made in the liberty movement, right? Patriot community, whatever, I thought it was pretty well made, and they kept it nice and succinct. It's 90 minutes long. Many times you watch these documentaries and it's oh my God, what is this, Lord of the Rings? It's no. So they kept it nice and concise. The other thing that I think that they did that was really good was they focused on what I have been saying from the beginning was really the area of focus, which was on the breakdown of the chain of custody around the drop boxes,
right?
And how the laws were violated really in most of the states regarding ballot harvesting, drop boxes, chain of custody, all of that. So I thought that was all really good. I think they did some other things that I think make the messaging pretty strong in it. On the flip side, I don't know enough about how fast and loose they're playing with the geo-tracking data. It's I've heard conflicting reports about that. And as with any political documentary, you're always trying to be on guard for the perspective, right? What's trying to happen here. But as somebody who I believe that the 2020 election wasn't the most secure election in American history, and that's what they've officially told us it is. That's the bar. That's the bar.
Yeah.
I think
you also phrase that as to not get dinged by the algorithm. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I just don't think it was the most secure in all of history, right?
That's it. Same. I agree.
I think they did plenty in the film to get regular people, anybody who would watch it, to think a little bit. And I think that's the most you could do with it. I also want to just say a big congratulations to Dinesh D'Souza, because that film grossed $10 million in a week. And through Locals, Rumble, through
Wow.
essentially alternative marketing, released to
Extremely.
digital.
Yeah.
It's very encouraging for people like me who recognize that
Right.
there is a way to do an end run around the system and still potentially monetize your work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just a similar white pill there when RFK put out that book on the coof, and basically without any advertising, he could get zero advertising. I believe when it was released, it was number 1 on
Yep.
Amazon, which, it feels like there's this bubbling, simmering underbelly of people that are pissed off and understand that everything's broken, that the CIA, like we mentioned earlier, FBI, DOJ, all of these organizations are all in cahoots with every powerful, evil group on the planet. And maybe they hate you and me. Seems like a lot of people are finally, really, it seems like finally this is coming to a head. And oddly enough, I think Trump had a lot to do with waking people up to that. I never would have thought that when the election happened the first time, but it seems that is the case. And now, on that happy note we've ended on here, plug away at anything you would like. Plug away. Plug away.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Again, my Substack is cancelproof.substack.com. qsentmemovie.com is where you can also check out the other film that we're working on. We've got some other stuff out there, but that's 2 places you can go to sign up, get on an email list. I'm so bad at marketing my own stuff sometimes that you won't hear from me for a very long time. I only say things as that's important there. So you won't get inundated, but because people can't find me really anywhere else, it's the best place to find out what's going on. And you will be at the top of the list to any big developments on events, releases, other projects that are happening.
Like the one in Las Vegas in July. Where have you been kicked from, by the way? I know this, but I want my audience to understand.
Yeah. So I've been permanently suspended from Twitter. And what people don't realize is that if you're permanently suspended, you as a human being are suspended. You can fake them out, but every time you set up a new account, you can then be suspended for ban evasion, right? So your one suspension carries through for anything if they ever connect you back to your device or anything. So I'm permanently banned from Twitter. Just lost another account there that I had reset up 2 weeks ago. Facebook, I may have an account under the radar there, but I have been banned from there. I have been banned from running ads. I cannot do any monetization of anything through the Facebook ad network ever. I've been banned from Vimeo, which is a video platform that we use for business. And I had 4,000 videos there. I had been there for 10 years. Had spent over $15,000 with them. They gave me a week to get my content off because I uploaded a rough cut of this film, The Most Canceled Man in America. Lost the TikTok accounts, and I've been banned from Freedom Fest and Anthem Film Festival. So that's the running total. I've lost a YouTube account as well for our podcast, Cancel Proof. So yeah, all the major places. I've recognized that there's a series of topics that you cannot go counter narrative on. It's COVID, Jan 6, the election, the gender issue, and race and immigration. Those are the big 5. I don't know what else there is, but if you go counter narrative and you do it loudly, they're going to shut you down. So I appreciate people like you taking the risk to have people like me on, and I love what you're up to, man.
I assume my audience can sense this from hearing you and seeing you if they're watching this video, but I can tell them you're so nice and cordial and easy to get along with in person. It's funny to think, well, let me get to know the most canceled filmmaker in America. Oh, it's Jason Rink, that nice Christian man from Texas. Yep, that's the one. At some point, you're only going to be left to like OnlyFans or something, and you're going to have to just go,
that's a good idea.
Here, it's me, Jason, on OnlyFans. I'm not naked, but here's my video. But of course, they'll allow all types of lewd acts on there, but you probably can't show a movie on January 6th or any of these topics.
I feel like I should set an OnlyFans account up just to see if I get canceled from it. That
would be brilliant.
Continue to bolster my credibility, right?
Yes, and knowing what they do allow on there, just Look, here's what they don't. A documentary on Nick Fuentes. No.
That's actually a pretty good idea.
Awesome. Well, I don't believe in intellectual property. Otherwise, I would trademark it. But Jason Rink, thank you so much for being here on Counterflow, man.
All right, Buck. Appreciate it. Hope to speak to you again.
You sure
Thanks.
will. Please go support Mr. Jason Rink. And that does sound kind of alluring to go out there to the Mirage in July in Las Vegas, doesn't it? I'm picturing a nice Las Vegas poolside environment, if you will, and then getting to see the screening of this film that we discussed. But go over to cancelproof.substack and give him support. Subscribe over there. And this guy needs us. He needs people who don't wish to cancel him, who appreciate what he does. And I think that's probably most of you listening. As for this show, you don't want me canceled either. If you'd like to donate to this show, you're more than welcome to, and I welcome your support at patreon.com/counterflow. And you can find me on Twitter, of course, at BuckRebel, BuckRebel. You can find everything at counterflowpodcast.com. Until next week, you guys, have an amazing week. Thank you for the support. Talk to you soon.
You get split in fucking half, till I call the hologram graph. But I am the center inside the placenta of math. You clash with cyanide gas and die fast. Rhythmical equivalent of solids, liquid and gas. We smash your sinus with the power of Lord Titus. But I am the virus inside of the iris of Cyrus.
Like the sound of the Counterflow podcast? Our audio production is provided by Podsworth Media. Check them out at podsworth.com.